power of faith. The Fraterus militia advanced cautiously along the submerged roadway, boots slipping on damp stone. Dirty water lapped at their ankles. The entire lower street drowned beneath sluggish, brackish flood. They hugged the wall to avoid the deeper black water, some whispering half-remembered prayers as they moved. Inquisitor Katerina Malinovska led from the front, her silhouette sharp and purposeful against the gloom. Deacon Absalon followed close behind, clutching his ornate staff as though it could ward off the horrors of this buried necropolis. His hulking servitor trudged at his side with patient, mechanical indifference. At the top of the sloped causeway they halted. From here they could see the vast expanse of the drowned city, ranks of toppled pylons, tiled causeways split by time, and the distant rise of the Great Pyramid where the Iron King's throne glimmered, a toxic emerald pulse in the haze. A broad plinth mastaba dominated the vista before them, its bulk shielding them from sight. Atop the high road beyond, Skop Wolfgar, chaplain of the Void Revenants, held a defensive line alone, giving the militia precious minutes to withdraw. They were, by all reason, little more than armed civilians under Ministorum direction. Wolfgar, reinforced by nothing but faith and fury, would fall back later. Astartes could move far quicker than any mortal. So long as the Xenos above did not notice them, Katerina thought grimly. This hidden city, this necro-complex buried under the oceans of Nitwirtha, was the worst kind of sleeping dog. Best left to lie, until one could return with a very large tank. Beyond the mastaba, a small plaza opened into a partially flooded avenue. At its far end, half shrouded by mist and the reflection of still water, a dolmen gate burned with ghostly green light. It was active. "Cover," Katerina hissed. She dived behind the broken foot of a shattered colossus. Absalon scrambled behind another fragment of masonry, his servitor crouching beside him with folded insectile limbs. The frateris scattered silently into alcoves and broken doorways. The three Arbites disappeared into the gloom like wraiths, their armor swallowing the light. There had been no sign of a gate on this side of the city until now. Every other functioning portal was clustered around the main plaza, beyond Wolfgar's beleaguered position. This was an outlier, a dangerous one. The deacon crawled along the wall to her side. "The gate lies between us and the ascent to the surface," he whispered. "I noticed," Katerina murmured, drawing her antique pistol and checking its charge. The sound rose then, metal on stone, soft but relentless. Columns of Necron warriors emerged from a far avenue and from the road behind them, marching in flawless formation. Their bodies were iron skeletons plated in brass and copper, barnacle-encrusted and draped in long ribbons of dead kelp. Their optics burned cold green as they approached. Absalon peered over the ledge, then dropped back down. "They must be heading for the gate," he whispered. "What do we do?" "We hide," Katerina replied, "until they pass." The deacon swallowed, torn between conviction and survival instinct. "We should not suffer these Xenos to live," he muttered, without any conviction at all. Katerina raised a brow. "Fine, go wave your staff at them." Absalon hesitated. In this instance, discretion is the better part of valor. "That's more like it," she whispered, amused despite herself. They held still, silent, breath shallow, as the metal phalanxes passed before them in perfect, silent order. The warriors halted only long enough to prepare entry protocols for the sunken gate. "Now what?" Absalon whispered. Katerina's eyes narrowed. "Now, we pray they all march inside, and we leave without a single soul realizing we were ever here." The Xenos made soft, splashing sounds as they waded into the flooded plaza, their metal feet vanishing beneath the black water as they crossed, utterly indifferent to its depth or temperature. On the far side, they climbed the stone steps in perfect silence, one by one, disappearing through the rippling emerald surface of the active Eisenstein-Rossen bridge. Katerina dared not move. She watched through the hollow of a broken plinth, breath shallow, counting the passing constructs in her head. 50, 60, 70, she lost count. There were too many. Then beside her, a faint clatter. One of the younger militia, pale-faced and trembling, had dropped a bone brooch, a carved effigy of the Emperor's finger. It bounced once, twice, then rolled to a stop on the wet flagstones between the humans and the Xenos ranks. The sound might as well have been a thunderclap. The nearest Necron turned its head with a slow, unnatural motion. A ripple of data passed through the formation. The final cohort halted. 3 warriors broke formation and turned toward the shadows. Ripples spread in the water as they advanced. The first construct stooped, its skeletal posture unnervingly precise. It lifted the little bone charm between 2 taloned fingers, turning it over in the cold green light of its optics. The relic looked impossibly fragile in that inhuman grasp. Every breath froze. No one dared make a sound. Katerina Malinovska moved like a specter, drawing her bolt pistol with glacial, silent precision. Beside her, Deacon Absalon placed a shaking hand upon his own weapon, a custom-built bolter engraved with the sigil of Archmagos Pyrovox of Incoloris. The skeletal warrior straightened. A shimmer of holographic light flickered above its palm, the projection of a robed Necron noble, its voice a cold metallic scrape. "Lord, we have human presence." The words were spoken in a dead, archaic dialect of Wirthan. Katerina felt her blood freeze. Then one of the Fraterus militia slipped. His lasgun clattered across the stone. Stealth shattered like glass. "Emperor, preserve us!" The speaker never finished. Katerina rose in an instant, a blur of sanctioned lethality, firing 5 bolt rounds into the Necron who had sounded the alarm. Each shot sparked violently against ancient metal, punching pits into its carapace but not felling it. The warrior staggered, recovered, and raised its weapon, emerald light roiling in its barrel. An Arbite's officer broke cover. He stepped directly into the path of the blast. His suppression shield melted instantly, his armor bubbling away with his flesh beneath, but still he pushed forward, jamming his pistol against the Xeno's skull and firing. The round exploded through metal and circuitry. Both fell, one human, one machine, collapsing into the rising water. Chaos erupted like a scream. The Fraterus militia fired wild, panicked volleys, crimson beams cutting through the mist. Necron warriors rotated in perfect unison, emerald weapons hissing to life. A militiaman was cleaved in half by a single green beam. Another's face dissolved in a sheet of molten bone and vaporized blood. 2 militia were fused into a single grotesque statue of glowing slag when a second volley hit them. Katerina holstered her bolt pistol and drew her father's antique dueling weapon, a centuries-old Volkite Serpenta, its golden casing blackened with age and faith. She fired. The first shot tore a warrior clean in half. The second vaporized its weapon arm. Nearby, techno-archaeologist Vane Kelev fired his relic sidearm. The shot sparked harmlessly off Xeno's plating. A young militia trooper dragged the old scholar behind cover, shielding him with his own body as green fire raked the wall. 3 militia were cut off. One was seized by a towering Necron and run through with a glowing blade, his torso dissolving into bubbling slurry. The 2 Arbites reappeared from the shadows, one unleashing a blast of alchemical foam from a riot shotgun, entombing a Necron's faceplate. The other blocked an emerald burst with his riot shield, the metal liquefying in his grip, before he fired point-blank and shattered the machine's skull. Both Arbites retreated, dragging survivors with them. Katerina reloaded, snapping Volkite shells into the Serpenta with muttered curses. The Xenos were closing in. Emerald beams turned the mist to boiling fog. More warriors marched from the upper road. She glimpsed Deacon Absalon crouched behind a broken statue, whispering prayers through trembling lips. Then came the scream. It was not human, not even close. The scream was metallic, as if a voice were trapped inside a rusted drum, then hurled end over end until the sound became a screeching memory of agony. From the far side of the flooded plaza, Necrons began to stumble through the dolmen gate, but these were twisted, hunched things. Their metallic ribs sagged like melting wax, fingers drawn into long, scything claws. They waded into the water, collapsing one by one, their bodies sloughing apart into molten ruin. The disciplined warriors turned as one, aiming at the newcomers, but one of the infected shrieked and charged from the water. It tore into its kin, molten ichor spraying like emerald fire. Another construct staggered, limbs warping, its torso bursting open as living metal mutated and consumed itself. The sound was a symphony of shrieking metal and thrashing limbs. "Saints preserve us," Absalon whispered, horror hollowing his voice. "They look infected," muttered an arbitrator, blowing the head off a warrior whose back had been turned. "Back!" Katerina shouted, dragging a dazed militia trooper behind the shattered statues. "They're fighting each other. Let's not get in the way." Absalon crouched beside her. Yes, I believe that would be considered impolite in polite company, he murmured. They huddled beneath the carved stone feet of dead gods as Necron fought Necron, the air thick with emerald lightning and liquid fire. The two factions tore each other apart, ignoring the humans entirely. Behind them, Vayne Kelev reached out from cover for his notes, the ones dropped earlier by a decapitated servitor, only to see them shredded into powder by a stray lance of green fire. "Those notes are important," he protested. The arbitrator beside him grabbed his collar and hauled him back. "We're important. Now shut up and stay down." The humans were forgotten. The plaza echoed only with screeches and the sound of metal ripping and melting. What remained of the infected Necrons, twisted by the technophage of Psychomancer Nekvothren, were cut down in silence, gunned apart or hewn limb from limb by their uncorrupted kin. The air stank of scorched metal, ionized air, and chemical rot. Finally the screams faded. A few last Gauss blasts cracked the mist, then silence. As the final echo died, the eyes of the silver and bronze legions turned toward the surviving humans. Seaweed hung from their rib cages like the tatters of drowned banners. With slow inevitability, the mechanical warriors began to advance. Scarab swarms churned beneath their feet, crawling in a living carpet toward the trapped mortals. Katerina risked a glance over the broken plinth, only for her hat to be instantly vaporized. "Emperor's bones," she hissed, ducking back. They were trapped. Whatever diversion the infected had provided was now gone. The metallic ranks marched forward, weapons raised. Katerina lifted her bolt pistol, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Make every shot count." But Deacon Absalon stepped forward. He holstered the bolter gifted by Archmagos Pyrrhovox of Incoloris. In his hands now was the gold-rimmed reliquary his servitor had carried. Katerina froze. The fool meant to meet the Xenos alone. "Deacon, stop." But he did not stop. He stepped into the open. An ecclesiarchy priest nearby put a hand on Katerina's arm. "Faith, Inquisitor, the deacon is no fool." She kicked at him, furious, but an arbitrator gripped her wrist. "Faith, Inquisitor," he snapped. Absalon walked forward alone. For a heartbeat, the Necron formation faltered. This lone priest seemed to confound their logic engines. The deacon opened the reliquary box. "May the Emperor have mercy on your worthless Xenos hides." The Necron ranks raised their weapons. A torrent of emerald energy lashed toward him. Katerina closed her eyes. At least, she thought, his death would be quick. Then the world split with a thunderous crack. A shockwave burst outward from the deacon, the heat of a newborn star at its center. Necron warriors melted instantly, their machine souls burned out, their metal bodies reduced to slag. The wave rolled across the plaza, turning constructs into puddles of glowing alloy. Katerina was hurled from her feet, smashing into stone. Light blinded her. The sound was all-consuming. When her vision finally cleared, she rose to her knees, expecting nothing but a smear of ash where Absalon had stood. Instead, the deacon remained upright, smiling pleasantly, unharmed. The reliquary lid closed with a soft, almost polite click. Before him lay the melted ruins of several dozen Necron warriors, their liquefied forms steaming and bubbling as the plaza flooded anew around their remains. He handed the reliquary back to his servitor with casual grace, then lifted his staff and straightened his scorched robes as though merely concluding a sermon. "Shall we be going?" he asked pleasantly. Katerina stared at him, utterly speechless. She glanced at the reliquary box with a cautious eye. "Wasn't that the one Archmagos Demia Voratrix gave you to store your broken rod of office after the Orc War?" The deacon nodded nonchalantly. "I believe it was." "I thought it was a box," Katerina said slowly. "Just a box." The deacon nodded again. "It is. A beat. It may possess a refractor field function." Katerina raised an eyebrow. "And," Absalon added, shifting a little under her stare, "it may also contain an inverter field, converting hostile energy into a directional conversion pulse." He offered a small shrug. "Possibly." Katerina inhaled through her teeth. "I was under the impression conversion fields were banned by the Adeptus Mechanicus." "I would not know," the deacon replied serenely. "I am merely a humble priest of the ecclesiarchy." He smiled at her. "Oh, Inquisitor, you appear to have lost your hat." Katerina looked down at the puddle where her wide-brimmed hat had been atomized moments earlier. She exhaled, resisting the urge to swear in 3 different hive slangs. Yes, the device was useless as an offensive weapon. Yes, it required the enemy to fire first at him. Yes, it would kill shooters without the bearer ever lifting a weapon. Perfect, she thought sourly. Exactly the sort of moralistic death trap an archmagos would hand to a worthy little priest. She turned to the ecclesiarchy priest and the Arbite's officer who had held her back. Their expressions were bland, faithful, and entirely unsurprised. Clearly they had known, or believed. Nothing could be proven. Nothing was written. It was all, officially, just a box. Katerina adjusted her coat, smoothed her hair, and decided that the next time she met Archmagos de Voratrix, she would have a very polite conversation with her. Perhaps even a gesture of gratitude. After all, the damn thing had just saved her friend. The green liquid of the half-submerged gate rippled, and the militia, Arbits, and Inquisitor scattered, taking aim as the surface trembled. "Ready, fire," called Katerina, raising her weapon. The water swelled, and Hālgengas stumbled through, waist-deep, rifle lifted over her head. The Serpenta sputtered uselessly, its battery drowned. She blinked at the circle of bedraggled warriors aiming straight at her, then lifted her weapon higher, clearing the floodline. "Hālgengas, voidsman of the Welsiax," she announced sharply. Katerina raised a hand. "Lower weapons." Hālgengas stepped aside as more void armsmen emerged, followed by the astropath Alward, half dragging a soaked crystal ball through the shimmering curtain of the gate. The Fraterus militia rushed forward, pulling exhausted crew from the warm water as the survivors of the lost ship stumbled free. And then, towering above the rest, came runesmith Torhern and Hearthguard Cinnabil, standing guard beside the Eisenstein-Rossen gate as more stumbling shapes came through. Captain Sigabild himself emerged last, saluting the Inquisitor and the Deacon. Katerina shook her head, half relief, half disbelief. "Where did you come from?" Absalon asked. A calm voice answered, "Zinach." Astropath Aylward stepped clear of the water, the crystal sphere glowing faintly in his grasp. "Now let's not tarry. I have a report to make." The gate's green light brightened, just as the roaring of engines split the air. Cinnabil had already begun placing melta-charges on the gate supports while Torhern hauled wounded crew from the pool. Then Elfstan burst through the portal on his black-armored bike. Water hissed beneath his tires as he skidded across the flooded plaza, looping in a wide arc. Steam curled around him, runes glowing faintly on his armor. He raised one gauntlet in a crisp, silent salute. Behind him the portal flared again. A deeper engine growl followed. The 10th captain, Hyorowolf, erupted from the gate at full throttle. His bike plunged deep into the pool, vanishing beneath the surface before bursting upward in a gout of steam. He landed on the stone causeway, water pouring from his armor like molten silver. He brought the bike to a halt beside Elfstan, saluting Katerina and Absalon with soldierly formality. A thunderous crump sounded beneath the water. Cinnabil's charges. The flickering gate guttered, stuttered, and died, casting darkness once more over the flooded plaza. Silence followed. The green glow was gone, replaced only by the pallid shimmer of gaslioma fungi clinging to the ruins. Hyorowolf nodded once. "So you found the sunken city. Saves time." Katerina pointed toward the distant causeway. "Elements of 2nd and 5th Company. Wolfgar and Osric have taken command." "How did you find this place?" Elfstan asked. "We found a body," Absalon said gently. Hyorowolf looked over the ragged survivors, priests, militia, Arbites, a techno-archaeologist. He shook his head. "We were gone less than 3 days," he murmured. "And somehow you fought the Iron King's host with shotguns and sidearms and still managed to carry out our rescue." He snorted softly. "Wolfgar will make a fine tale of it, I'm sure." He mounted his bike, engine rumbling. "For now, get the Welsiax crew clear. Elfstan and I have a final duty." Katerina's eyes narrowed. "And that is?" He tapped the oblong green stone affixed to his armor, ending the war that started 20,000 years ago. He throttled the engine and tore away across the plaza, spraying water in his wake. Elfstan followed, Sikhs raised in salute, the two riders vanishing into the mist-choked ruins. Katerina turned back to the survivors, over 70 battered souls, mortal and Astartes alike. "This way," she ordered, leading them up the drowned roadway. Deacon Absalon fell into step beside her. She glanced at him, still unable to believe the man stood alive after annihilating an entire Necron platoon without lifting a finger. "Deacon?" "Yes, Inquisitor?" Don't ever pull something like that again. Absalom chuckled and gestured to his servitor to reclaim the reliquary box. Why, Inquisitor? It almost sounds like you care. Katerina scoffed, threading her fingers through the hole melted in her hat. And that phrase, the Emperor helps those who help themselves. She gave him a low, incredulous laugh. Yes, Absalom replied. She stared at him a long moment, the man who had survived where logic said no one could. There's always more to you, Deacon, than anyone expects. The thunder of the Space Marine bikes echoed off the drowned streets, like ancient engines waking from aeons of slumber. Mist swallowed the two black-armored riders, leaving only the faint tremor of their passing. Katerina rested a hand on the cold stone of the archway, watching the fog close behind them. The Fraterus militia murmured prayers behind her, whispering of the miracle they had witnessed, the priest who destroyed the dead with nothing but faith. Deacon Absalom stood beside her, making the sign of the Aquila. Faith, lady, he murmured. People never understand its power,